type in, and this is, it's kind of a risky title.
We'll put the link. Do you mind looking for the article, Neil, and putting that in there?
Its title is, on quotes, coping with a quote-unquote heretical pope and answering some of the aggressive invitations from the Orthodox.
Okay. Do we have a heretical pope?
No, I put it in quotes.
I see.
I to save myself. But
do you think we have a heretical pope?
I think that he is the kind of guy, and this is the best I could give it, is he knows the boundaries of the faith. He knows the dogmatic bound. He knows Denzinger, the lines. But he sees this need to pastoralize the church to the point where he runs and parks his feet right at the boundary and kind of leans.
So he's not just standing on the edge, he's leaning.
But he sees it as, well, we need to lean for the sake of this person and that. That's the best picture I can give.
Yeah.
If somebody says, well, wait a minute, are you denying this and that? He could always kind of lean back and say, no, look at where my feet are parked. Technically, I'm in the lines,
Which is so unhelpful in a pagan age.
It is. Well, it's just terrible.
Even just happened the other day where he came out and said, don't be harsh with your children if they're experiencing gender dysphoria. It's like, okay, no one would disagree with that, and yet we live in a society where everyone's telling us that this new thing is the new secular dogma. We have to all, step in line with. It would be helpful if you would actually say something in that regard.
Right. Exactly. To balance it out. Otherwise, suspicions grow.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the best thing I could say about Pope Francis. Without sitting down and listening to him, right now I feel like I can't even by his anything he writes or something, especially in his private capacity, I just don't even read it. But in that article, I rehearsed the aggressive claims of Orthodox apologists. And, hey, look at what's going on with Pope Francis, and look at what you could have here. Now look at this link versus this clown mass or this and that. But in that article, what I do is I go through some of the things that you can expect to learn as an Orthodox when you start to go. So if you want to go. Okay. But here's some things you're going to learn, and you're going to have to foresee how you're going to manage with this. Okay, so I was talking to one guy, and he said, yeah, the Pope, he condemned the death penalty. That's part of the Christian faith, and that's like a clear heresy, and I have to leave. Okay, well, where'd you go? Oh, I'm going to OCA. I'm going to the Orthodox Church of America. Okay. Are you aware that the Orthodox Church of America, as a synod, has condemned the death penalty in even stronger terms? Well, maybe they didn't. We don't have an ex cathedra. We don't have like a binding this or that. Like, well, okay, but your synod still says that, right? And you think it's heresy? Well, yeah. Okay, so are you now in communion? Did you leave a communion of heretics to join a communion of heretics? Well, no. Well, okay, so wait a minute. You got to kind of backpedal here, okay? It's not consistent to condemn the Catholics for condemning the death penalty in unsubstantial foundations. Right? Like, Pope Francis didn't say it's
intrinsically
evil, even though the suspicions mount.
Mm-hmm.
But he didn't say that, right? But then you go to the Orthodox Church, and it's got, it's a claim. It's got the same teaching in stronger terms, and yet they're not a problem,
What are some more examples of this?
Yeah, so there's more examples. Obviously, the whole Orthodox Church doesn't condemn the death penalty, right? The Russians, they're all pretty much saying that mercy should be considered first, but like the Russian Synod does not condemn the death penalty. He says the state has the right if the state needs to. Well, but some synods, some parts of the Orthodox Church world have denounced the death penalty. But another realm would be in this issue of ecumenism. A lot of people don't realize, but in the Orthodox world, they had their own little slowly creeping Vatican II. You don't know about it until you get involved. But around the 1920s, you had sort of I don't want to call it liberal fallout. That's way too strong. But you had this tendency to sort of ecumenize the Greeks did. And it sort of developed a variety of schisms. They're called the old calendarists, but that's really kind of it's not really describing them. They've separated from the main 14 autocephalous heads because of ecumenism and other liberal teachings that they think the 14 heads have succumbed to. When I say the 14 heads, I mean when we talk about Eastern Orthodoxy, the canonical version, we're talking about those 14 heads. Constantinople, Alexandria, Antioch, Moscow, Georgia, the rest. Well, you've got schisms coming out in the 20th century. Rokor, for example, Russian, that was a schism from the Moscow Patriarchate in the 20th century. They came back, well, most of them came back into communion with the Moscow Patriarchate in 2007. So when most people go, oh, I'm going Rokor, they're talking about this newly healed schism between Rokor and Moscow. But you still got Roka, which is those who didn't come back into union, right? Well, they left because they recognized that the Orthodox churches were becoming succumb to the heresy of ecumenism. So the Assisi prayer in 1986, a lot of sedevacantists will take crop pictures of the Pope
with the Dalai Lama.
Yeah, but there's like 3 or 4 Greek hierarchs there. In fact, in 1986, there was one representative from, I think, like 9 or 10 of the autocephalous churches that went to that event. And they went again in the anniversary events. So in 2002, you had a representative from even Moscow that came. Yeah. So then it's like, well, now I've got to justify that. Like, what do I do about that? I'm certainly queasy about that as a Catholic. But now I'm an Orthodox. Well, what do I do? Nobody can. I mean, back in the 4th century, if somebody saw that, you would have been yanked out. Your name would have been yanked out and remembered like Arius, And yet it's tolerated. So now you've got this issue to come up with a reason why you're going to stay Orthodox, even despite these issues. Oh, well, we don't have infallible leaders, so it doesn't really matter. Okay, all right, fine. But you're still rubbing elbows and shoulders in communion, especially at the altar, with these people. So these schisms started in the Orthodox Church. They call them the old calendarists or the true church, the true Orthodox churches. And they're coming out with some legitimate accusations against the 14 autocephalous heads. A friend of mine was running away from Pope Francis, and he joined the Antiochian church in his neighborhood. And when he was there, he started talking to the priest. The priest basically up and said, hey, I love the Catholic. I don't know what he said, but in other words, like, Ratzinger's my favorite theologian. Like, when you're leaving Catholicism to go to the Orthodox Church, that's the last thing you want the priest to say, right? You want to see the antithesis of Catholicism. You're leaving Catholicism, you want to see the antithesis of the problems you left. So when you start to see them clone in the Orthodox Church, so he left the Antiochians, joined the Russians. He found a Russian parish, thinking, well, the Russians, they got it. And he found out, no, they're breaking canons, quote unquote. I'm not saying they are, okay? I'm just saying this is what he came to see. And then he realized he needed to join one of these breakoffs to be truly canonical.
Is that where he is?
Yeah, last I he was ordained priest in the breakoff. So you got that, you've got Patriarch of Constantinople, who's officially supporting the licity of contraception.
Right.
And the Russian Orthodox Church, in certain cases, in their synodal document, it certainly doesn't condemn it. They see that there's been some sort of development where you can, this might be, if as long as it's not abortifacient, Now imagine if the Vatican tomorrow came out and said that.
Yeah.
Well,
I'd be looking for people would be looking for a more pure, more pristine, more.
It would basically say the Catholic Church is finally sank.
Yeah.
But if the Moscow Patriarchate or the Constantinopolitan Patriarch comes out and says, well, we've undergone biosexual development, and now if it's not abortifacient, you could talk to your confessor, and it may be okay.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't make news. So there are some things that you're going to learn as an Orthodox, and I list some other things, and I link to official synodal statements. These are not just like, oh, Father John Meyendorff said this, or oh, Metropolitan Kallistos Ware said this. This is official synodal documentation. And maybe you'll be okay with it. But I guarantee you're going to have to, you'll start giving yourself some of the same reasons to be Orthodox that I would have to be, to be Catholic.
Can I read to you? I don't know if you saw a video I did the other day. I don't know if you ever watched the show, but I texted a priest friend of mine. He's an Eastern priest. I won't say his name because I want you to give me your honest assessment of a text message he sent me. I was interviewing a fellow called Derek Cummins, who's been a Protestant for a while. He's been discerning between Catholicism and Orthodoxy. Ended up choosing Orthodoxy as a catechumen. And I texted my Eastern priest friend. I'm like, dude, there were times as I was listening to Derek, and I'm like, I kind of would love Orthodoxy to be true so I can escape this scandal-ridden church.
Yeah.
That's a vulnerable, maybe even an inappropriate thing for me with a Catholic YouTube channel to say, but that's where I was at. Yeah. So I text him and I say that. Here's what he said back to me, and I want to see what you think. He said, my friend, you are eating my daily bread, but that's the age-old temptation, a spiritually pure church. This is the spiritual manifestation of the primordial fight or flight mechanism. We want to run away from the church where our shepherd denies Christ thrice. We want to run away from the church where her elite inner circle fight among themselves about who is the greatest. We want to run away from the church where her most trusted collaborator sold him for a few farthings. We want to find a church which has none of the above, but it won't be Christ's church. Now you know what it's like to marry Gomer. I've been down this hallway, and it's appealing at first, but which door to enter? Which Orthodox church? All the many Orthodox, except the Russians, on paper, allow contraception. They are not in communion with each other. There is no central authority on discipline or doctrine, and homosexuality and the problem of concubinage is widespread. Our only option is to fight for our mother, she who is abandoned in the ditch, half dead, fouled, wasted, and covered in mire and vermin. That's the bride. Before you respond to that, that was a text message. I mean, he wasn't like writing an official statement to me.
Wow.
So, whatever you might think of that, like recognize, like that was just him texting me back, and I texted him back and went, can we meet for a cigar? I love this man. What do you think of that, though? Because what you're referencing when you talk about your friend leaving Catholicism, it's like this purity spiral, right? Where we're just desperate to find solid ground somewhere.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's any coincidence that we're looking for solid ground somewhere when we come from broken families, we exist in a broken nation, we're now existing in a broken church. I mean, it's an understandable reaction, but what do you think?
Yeah, no, I think he's spot on. I think that...
in that case, it was Father Jason Sharon. Okay, continue. I just didn't want you to ream him.
Yeah, no, thank you, Father Jason. Yeah, so I agree. I agree. I like I said, I was a catechumen for a while, and I got to learn certain things. With no names mentioned. I was at the catechumen class, and we were going around the table, and a young couple had voiced their opinion. Oh, I'm glad that my husband did not decide to go Catholic. And I said, And in my eyes, I'm like, well, I understand that. I'm trying to get out. I said, why? And she goes, because we can't have kids right now. I said, what do you mean? She's like, yeah, we're going to use contraception. And the priest sitting across the table, I was looking to him to hear, oh no, we don't, we believe in the procreative command of Genesis. We believe, I was expecting him to say something, but he just almost agreed. And so once I got to asking, my wife actually put the question, do you guys believe that this is condemned? And the answer we got was, well, we don't judge. Which at that time, that's just not what I wanted to hear. It was already, things were already mounting about Orthodoxy at that point, where I knew that if I was going to become Orthodox, and I was going to have the same critical mind that I did as a Catholic, I was going to have to start saying, well, yes, but. Yes, this is here, but. Yes, this is here, but the liturgy is beautiful. Yes, this is here, but the liturgy is beautiful. And the chant's beautiful. And the prayers are beautiful. And the booklets are beautiful. And all this stuff is beautiful. But I was already doing that as a Catholic. Like, well, yeah, this is a problem, but we've got the fullness of the faith. Or, yeah, we've got adoration. Yeah, we got the mystics. Yeah, I was already doing that as a Catholic, So how could I break my baptismal vow just to find myself
in the same
spot? Granted, there's a honeymoon phase, right? You've got the chant and you've got the...
You just bought your fresh chotki and...
Save thy people. I mean, it's like, it's beautiful, But, like I said, I had that time as an Anglican where I left because I needed to know if the claims were true. And so for me, if somebody says, why shouldn't I just go to the Orthodox Church? Well, I would say, look, I would say the Orthodox Church has more difficulties with keeping itself defended on this issue of history and doctrine, but those are not sensational because, you don't really, it's hard to get a feeling from it. When you study, for example, the Filioque, and let's just say the Filioque is true. If the Filioque is true, the Orthodox have condemned it sufficiently in official venues to the point where it stands or falls. Orthodoxy does. It stands or falls on whether it was right in condemning the Filioque. So, there's some scholars today, ecumenical scholars, well, no, we could talk about it. There's room to talk about it. And we just don't like the addition to the creed. No. If you study the Byzantine reaction to the West, they condemned the Filioque doctrine. That's what was intolerable. If they're wrong about that, then that's a puncture to the heart of Orthodoxy. So there might be some stabs at the surface of the lungs as in the Catholic Church right now. But I don't think we have a spear through.
I just love how violent all of your analogies
I'm
are.
sorry.
I know, I just love it. It's what it's like being punched in the face, have your teeth knocked out. No, this is good. Spear directly in the heart. Got it. Yeah.
But it's not sensational.
No, I like the analogy.
It's not sensational. You still got the Orthodox beauty. You still got the chant. You still got the liturgy. But I do believe that they condemned a biblical and patristic doctrine.
Let's get into that then.